This is your Jiujitsu Uncle Dave, and I'm telling you to stop buying instructions. Now, before you crucify me as an eco group, check out the rest of the episode. Now, I know that was a clickbaity opening and title, but hear me out. There's a couple of reasons why I agree somewhat with the eco side of saying that tutorials, or whether it's short form on YouTube or full instructional 2 hour DVDs, are not that helpful. And to be clear, I have a lot of them. But for context, I think the eco side is trying to point out something poorly. It's insinuating a lot of times that instructionals, wherein the step by step process of learning a movement sequence, is not going to be helpful for practitioners as compared to practicing things in a live environment. I think is partially true, but it's also missing context. Wherein instructionals are ultimately just tools. They are not magic pills that make people who watch them all of a sudden become proficient at something. At the same time, I do agree with the usage of these tools, particularly for hobbyists and lesser experienced grapplers, is being used wrongly. So, in general, how do we get sucked into watching instructionals or move over the day type of content on social media? A lot of times it's through discovery, doom scrolling, or just algorithm feed. We find something interesting and we're like, cool, let me try that. Okay, that's understandable, especially for social media context. But for instructionals, where we actually have to pay good money for, and the content are a lot more in depth and long, it's pretty common for practitioners to look at the chapters and just go straight to the technique and see how the moves is being executed. In fact, one of the most common requests that people have in terms of content is requesting the person who's making the video to show the entire move first for context before going into the details, the step by step, the how, the long monologue about the technique, which I think is the fault of both the content creators, but also just how we like the products to be delivered to us. And the reason why I say it's a little factual that it is a waste of time and money is not because the moves themselves or the instructions are useless. They're not. They're absolutely full of value and full of useful information. But for less experienced people, we are isolating the entire focus on the moves itself. It doesn't matter whether the moves are basic, like just executing a rear naked choke, for example, or something more advanced wherein you are doing a twister from the back. The complexity of the move is not the problem. It's not the main issue. The issue where I feel that instructionals fail in terms of efficacy and of achieving its potential to help grapplers is the context of its macro view, explaining the circumstances of when or how that series of topic for the instructional comes about. How do you get there? What are the situations that lead you there? What are some of the prerequisites that you have to be aware of, whether to achieve or to deny, to make that move useful? For example, let's say we're talking about a basic DVD series targeted to white belts on close guard attacks. Again, it's extremely common, right? Anybody who has done jiu-jitsu for a while have probably bought a beginner's level of tutorial, or even in class have been shown the same sort of content. We start in close guard and we're being shown on how to execute hip bump sweep, for example, or scissor sweep in isolation. There's nothing wrong with all the details and all the variances and all the principles that the instructors or the presenter of the instructional provides. They're all correct, whether it's gi, no gi, whether you prefer to position your top knee in a certain way, what grips you choose, etc. They're all variances of achieving the same thing, being able to get up and sweep the person over to finish the move. However, what's lacking for concept, especially at the more beginner level, is helping the students to understand not just when to do it. I think it's being covered. Like again, let's say for hip bump sweep, it is a pretty common notion that you execute it. You know, when people try to posture up and they're leaning back, and that's when you do a hip bump sweep. And as most of you have tried, you have noticed that it rarely works as as advertised when being done by a lesser experienced practitioners. So why does it work at the black belt level, at the competitor level, which is most instructionals, the makers of those instructionals level are at? Why does it work for them and not for you? Logic should say that if it works at the highest level, it should work for beginners. Yes, but just like what we talked about in previous episodes, as you get more advanced, there are so much more nuances and little details that become natural muscle memory to you that you don't even think about. That a less experienced person still has to be actively mindful to achieve the simplest of things, such as weight placement, center of gravity awareness, where to grip, how to grip, all those things, being sensitive to posture changes, all those things are difficult things to learn. And these instructionals often do not cover those things. If we talk about hip bump sweep, are we immediately assuming that the person is starting from close guard? That's fine. That becomes like a positional sequence where we have a starting point. You have somebody in between your legs in a close guard. Should logically then focus on things that talk about posture control and manipulation of center of gravity and baiting people to do certain things so that the move itself will be useful, because the actual move of a hip bump sweep is simple enough, but it's how to get there that is difficult. How do you prevent people from posting on your torso that stops you from getting up? How should you be holding your close guard that allows you to that allows your opponent to convince him or herself to give you that posture that allows you for hip bump sweep? What are the most common reactions that allows you to prep and combine before you hit that hip bump sweep? With a hip bump sweep, specifically, I see a lot of instructionals where they teach the hip bump sweep, but almost immediately they teach you a subsequent chain of moves that you can do if that move fails. For example, if you do a hip bump sweep, the person posts their hand and stops the hip bump sweep. Guess what? Now you can capture that hand for a kimura, or they use your other hand to pose and you can shoot a triangle, or whatever that might be. They quickly abandon the tutorial or the move that they want to teach. Instead, it should be the other way around. How should you use a triangle, a hip bump, an arm bar, posture control, grip fight sequence, an arm drag, etc., to allow you to hit the hip bump sweep in multiple manners? The execution of the final move should be taught right from the start of the tutorial, and that's pretty much it. You cover the basics, you cover the primary physical mechanics of it, the I guess to use the eco term, as much invariance as possible that is addressed. And then everything else for the lesson, whether it's in class or tutorial, should be based on, I wouldn't say should be, but it'll be more beneficial for people to explore how to get there rather than what to combine with it, because you're essentially giving up on the move pretty early, which is not logical, right? If you think about the purpose of it. Even in class, we see the same thing in a lot of beginner courses where you're going to teach one move and the next move that will be taught will be, what if the person does this and this is how you counter it? And the counter is usually abandoning the first move that you did to do something else, which again is leading people to end up resetting and learning something new again and not build depth, not build the depth of knowledge and familiarity in all the possible sequences and variables and scenarios that can lead them to develop a deeper skill on that specific skill set. That's why we see a lot of top athletes excel at something and we attribute certain moves to them. Like it's almost like a brand. Like if you are old school and you talk about close guard and cross collar chokes, the number one person you'll think about will be Roger Gracie. If you think about butterfly sweep and north-south choke, you'll be thinking about Marcelo. That did not happen by magic. These guys trained years to become experts at that move, not for the finishing. The finishing part is the absolutely easiest part of things. It's the amount of knowledge they have to set up, to bait their opponents, to deny their opponent certain moves, to stop that specific specialty move that they know. Even in the modern, more leg locky game and the more nogi style of passing, it's not because an athlete is magically more knowledgeable on a specific move than somebody else. With the amount of information that we have access to right now and how open training is, even between competitors, there's no secrets going on anymore. It's a matter of who spends the time to understand a specific move more. And I think that's what's missing a lot of times in our training, especially for anybody who isn't like a full time or a serious competitor. We lack depth. We lack a deeper understanding of how certain things work. And we got lured by shiny object syndrome and give up on things that we already know and we can further develop. So that's my take. What do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Is there anything you're working on right now? And typically, if you have something that you want to work on, how many sessions, how many hours, how long do you do? How long of an investment of time do you put into it? Let me know in the comments. Let me know if we see each other. That's all I have for you. Jiujitsu Uncle out. Peace.